Hello and welcome to the Xenogenesis podcast. This is episode 50, in which we're covering chapters 3 and 4 from part 4, home of book 2, Adulthood-Rites of the Xenogenesis trilogy by Octavia E. Butler. My name is Rationality, and I'm joined as always in the village of Phoenix this time around by my co-host,
Michael Glinka. Hi everyone. A nice number, 50 episodes. Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's a pretty good number of episodes.
I know, right? And like we've went through a quiet journey so far. But I will leave that. I'll leave the reminiscence about like what journey it was after we finish this book, maybe. which isn't actually far. I mean, like we only have a few chapters left.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close.
So, but man, like it's interesting. It's interesting. I need to say, from straight off the bat, my expectations towards Gabe were low, but holy shit, like, man, the man knows how to push, how to dig a hole, like, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of more or less what I would have expected, to be honest.
No, to be fair, yeah, but like, honestly, it's like, you think you reached the rock bottom, and then here he comes with fucking dynamite. Honestly.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that as we get to it. So let's do your chapter 3 predictions.
Sure. So I thought that as Akin was working on trying to heal Tate, something would indeed interrupt them. But since, in the chapter they were talking about the raids and they're happening and people having guns, I thought that maybe it's just ill-timed raid taking place and Gabe running in, maybe like trying to wake them up or something, trying to protect them while there's shooting taking place, but like no.
Yep, no real disruption, just Gabe getting scared, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I understand fear, but like, holy shit, man, like, it's... Well, anyway, let's maybe start to sort of at least give Gabe some ability to defend himself in spite of our hatred towards him. Well, my hate.
So just follow the instructions, man. Follow the instructions.
So the story of chapter 3 starts with Gabe, and as Richard said, no raid or anything, but himself interrupting Akin's healing process. And as the book says, in spite of his warning to Gabe, in spite of Tate's reassurance, Gabe came in the room before the healing was complete. He returned only a few hours later because he was afraid for Tate and suspicious of Akin. He, of course, found Akin in a position that resembled a leech. I think, in my opinion, is pretty accurate. And considering that Tate's body temperature was very low, and I think that's most likely caused by Akin to slow down her metabolism while he is working her, Gabe panicked, thinking she is dying.
Yeah, which, I mean, I can, it's been a few hours, they're just lying there and she's cold. I can see why he might get a bit spooked.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what exactly was he hoping to achieve?
Exactly. Knowing very well that an Oankali can poison. So knowing that Akin was connected to Tate, like interrupting Akin would almost immediately mean that she would 100% die if Akin didn't have the control he had.
Yeah.
And yet that...
pretty stupid decision, I think. That he basically just like punches Akin in the hope of getting him to come off in one go is fine.
Yeah.
But I thought the hypothermia thing was an interesting place to go off on a little bit of a sciencey related tangent. Because it's become a bit of a staple of like medical dramas, right? There's always at some point there's an episode where they cool someone down to do heart surgery.
Yeah.
That's always
Is it heart surgery, but there's also brain surgery, right? Because if they're like,
I think for some for some brain surgeries. But
Yeah.
I think the most established application of extreme cooling in surgical contexts is for things like aortic dissections.
Okay.
And like heart procedures of various types. Based on my quick reading.
Okay.
But it's apparently the sort of maximum duration that you can really achieve safely at low temperatures is about 30 to 40 minutes.
Okay.
And the degree of cooling from between like just a little bit below normal body temperature of 35 degrees C all the way down to like 10 degrees C. Depending on how long you want to get that protection for. Mm-hmm. There's a pretty nice review of the subject that we can link. That's accessible.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is now, question is, what about all those? If that's the, scientifically shown levels of cooling down of the body we can achieve, what about all those people who decided to undergo like cryostatic, preservation?
The cryonic preservation stuff. Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah,
then.
That's a bit. I mean, it's hard to say in some cases. I think as far as we know, we can't yet. Well, no one's ever been revived from it, and no one's ever done it with larger organisms than rats and hamsters. Mm-hmm. And even then, it wasn't like frozen. That was, I think, about 0 degrees C, and with ice in between like 10 to 50% of the water was frozen, I think.
Okay.
So that's I think the limit to which we've currently pushed that, and that was in the 50s. There's actually there's a great Tom Scott video. Called I Promise the Story About Microwaves is Interesting. Which goes a little bit into the history of cryobiology. And talks about the story about the hamsters and rats that they were freezing and trying to revive. That works, right? You can cool hamsters and rats down to about 0 degrees C in like a bowl of antifreeze and then revive them with a pretty good success rate using a microwave.
Right.
The reason the title's about microwaves is because it wasn't working so well with other sources of heat than microwaves.
Okay.
And it was also effectively before commercial microwaves were invented. So they like used an RAF radar and like some fine chicken wire mesh to make their microwave.
Nice. Good old times. Trying all the weird stuff.
I strongly recommend that video. It's good.
But like, so that's the limit of what we can achieve. But like,
I mean, part of the reason for the problem is one of the key things in doing cooling right, as I understand it, I'm not an expert in cryobiology, is that you have to cool down rapidly enough that you don't get large ice crystal formation.
So that's why, for example, when we have tissues, when we want to freeze down, we use liquid nitrogen in the labs, because if you want to preserve the tissue's integrity, you have to do it very, very quick. But then, for example, human body, to get to the center of the body, that's another story.
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
It's like the sheer thermal mass of organisms larger than about a rat or a hamster means you just can't chill them rapidly enough to avoid that problem of ice crystal formation.
Absolutely.
And once you have ice crystals forming, then you poke holes in the cells and make a whole mess of stuff.
Basically, what's going to happen is that when they defrost those people who have been frozen, cryopreserved, they're basically going to turn into mush.
Yep. Which is basically what happens to like corpses that have been frozen. Right? If you go and unfreeze some Neanderthal from a chunk of ice in Siberia or something, then that's what you end up with, right?
Yep.
It gets to mush pretty quick. So that's that's the major barrier to cryonics is that problem. I mean, so there are some people who kind of reckon that the sufficient information is encoded in the structure that you could scan the brain of someone who's been cryopreserved rather, and then emulate them. But it's I don't know about that one.
I'm not sure if in the next 100 years that the technology will go far enough to do this yet.
Yeah, that's the long time horizon kind of a deal, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, depends, if Disney becomes a ultra corporation owning everything, including countries, maybe they will want to resurrect Walt Disney to their supreme leader.
Apparently that one's apocryphal. Walt Disney being frozen, but
yeah, I know. I'm joking, but just Disney came into my head because
it's fun.
Yeah. Just we've woken up Walt Disney. Yes, our supreme leader has something to say to you. Cool.
Knowing Disney, it would be something like, oh no, we need him for the copyright law, right? So if he's still alive, then he can still claim copyright on the things, and we can keep it for 1,000 years, not just the 100 we've already extorted from the government.
Yeah. Wow.
No. So at least that dystopian timeline is probably not available to them.
Hopefully. Let's hope.
Yeah. Wouldn't put it past Disney.
Yeah.
No.
But the thing is, in the cases of those cryopreservation of the human tissues, didn't they flush the water out initially with some sort of cryopreservants?
Yeah, so that's so I think some of the people who have the best bet, I suppose, at maybe being able to be successfully defrosted are the ones where they basically they chop your head off and they plug antifreeze into the circulation, and then they try and freeze your head real quick.
Wow,
it sounds nuts, but yeah, that's pretty much the deal. Yeah,
we literally are going to live in the Fallout universe where you have robo brains just for driving around, people's brains put in the robot to interact with others. Man, that's weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's certainly a better bet than at being resurrected at some point than just dying and not having your head frozen, I suppose.
I guess. I don't know if it's better, but you know what? Let's.
I've considered signing up for cryonics, but at the moment I just don't think they're quite there yet.
Please, Richard, don't.
It's probably not worth it yet.
Some things there's as a scientist, I understand that we sort of in a way fight against nature in a way in certain cases, but I think there's a certain order to things, and there's no need for living longer than 100 years.
I very much disagree. Aging biology, right? It's the whole.
I know you're working on aging biology, but at the same time, I feel like I don't know.
Well, we can get into the whole
debate later.
Of death and ethics at another time.
Absolutely, just a whole episode of us arguing about why we could actually make a debate of you go for, I go against, and see what conclusion we can come to. That'd be an interesting conversation.
So. One other thing that occurred to me during that whole process is there is a very fun series of novels that if you enjoy this, I suspect you may also enjoy, called The Bobbyverse Books by Dennis E. Taylor, which feature to try and be spoiler-free, a character for whom the cryopreservation thing is relevant.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, that's very fun. I strongly recommend it.
Absolutely, I'll need to check it out.
But bringing things back a little bit.
Go on.
The subject at hand, hypothermia in surgery, whilst it has specific applications for cooling you down to protect you from damage resulting from lack of oxygen affecting your tissues, especially your brain, is used in particular surgical applications, like I said. But for the most part, hypothermia during surgery is a bad thing, especially like mild hypothermia. If you're just a couple degrees cooler than you're supposed to be, then there's some potentially problematic side effects. So, and that's relatively easy to miss. So keeping it, like, it's a thing that anesthesiologists keep an eye on, is what your temperature is. And for the most part, I think it's probably a lot more common for people to be warmed up to keep them at the right temperature during surgery than it is for them to be cooled down for complicated cardiac surgeries.
Is there any particular reason that people investigate why just cooling a few degrees down is causing issues?
There seems to be there's a whole host of side effects from just being a little bit hypothermic. Various, like, I can't remember off the top of my head now, but there's when I was looking at an article that had a whole list of like adverse events of varying types. You know, it's like those American drug commercials that list off every side effect under the sun at the end of the thing in a super fast voice. Right? It's like,
right.
It was like that. It's just like all kinds of weird shit goes wrong if you get a little bit cold during surgery.
Interesting.
Apparently.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's surprising because I always felt like when you go to a hospital and they made you, put a gown on and you just lay down, it's always freaking cold in those rooms. And it's just how do you keep me warm if I'm feeling freezing in here?
I think that's one of the things that's the problem, is if the operating room is a bit cool, then the way that you're typically positioned in surgery is not really conducive to keeping you warm. So having like some extra blankets and some heating stuff to keep you at the right temperature is a thing that is done.
Interesting. I wasn't aware that there was issues if your body like goes a few degrees down. That I thought it wouldn't matter. But then here again, wasn't aware of this. That's interesting. Yep. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, so is that all? Is that all of those potential side effects in the article you linked in the notes?
No. So that one was a bit more focused on surgical applications of cooling you down. Mostly on the cardiac stuff, but the side effect stuff. There were a few different articles that I saw. Just sort of skimmed the abstract of while I was Googling.
Okay. I'll have a look as well.
Hypothermia-related biology.
Later on for references for everyone. That's fine. But yeah, should we continue? Because this chapter is actually pretty short. We managed to squeeze a nice tangent into a conversation in here.
Yep, I thought it was a short chapter, so a brief diversion into cryobiology would be fun.
Yes, absolutely. So in the chapter as we said, giving a bit of returning a bit of honor to Gabe. It's understandable. He saw Tate, Akin being attached to Tate being called, so obviously it's normal, I would panic, if I saw, my fiance or any friends like, in this position, and being an impatient man myself, I can imagine, doing something like this. But then again, I do hope that I have bit more, brain cells in my head that would, thinking it could be dangerous for the person lying there. So maybe I should just let them finish. But here again, I give a bit of honor back to Gabe. But yes, so he initially tried to pull Tate away, which stirred Akin a bit. But Boy was too focused on her to realize what is really happening. And well, I said that, I give honor back to Gabe, but when he does, what he just does now is just fucking stupid, which is he then decides, instead of pulling Akin away, because he was obviously afraid of getting stung, he will punch the boy instead. Knowing well that Akin is connected to Tate. I swear. That man is just... So, and this is a short excerpt from the book. The first blow all but tore Akin loose. It hurt him more than he had ever been hurt, and he could not help passing some of his pain onto Tate. like they were this close from. Well, Tate felt what Akin felt, which is I'm sure she's gonna rip Gabe another one, but two, they were just this close from poisoning Tate.
Yeah.
But Akin, the legend he is, did not do it. Like he did not know when Tate began to scream and just automatically held to her. But luckily for all, thanks to Akin's strength, he was able to withdraw from Tate's nervous system without any injury, without injuring her or worse, killing her. Like, it as the book says, it was an amazing feat that a normal Oankali was not capable of, as often told by his Agje teacher. So well done to him that he didn't just poison Tate while Gabe was fucking punching him in the head.
Yeah, and we've like discussed before that his like sensory tentacle thing that's in his tongue is like super sensitive.
Yes,
and it has those long filaments that he's like effectively putting into Tate to intervene in her biology.
Yeah,
and Gabe comes along and just like yanks on that thing super hard.
It's literally like pulling on your nerve. Oh God.
Yeah.
Ugh.
That's yeah.
Like I imagine like when you have the funny nerve in your elbow and you hit yourself, I can imagine it like 1,000 times worse.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So manages not to kill her and isn't seriously injured.
But yeah, this is where the chapter ends, where whatever happened after disconnecting is unknown, because Akin just goes completely unconscious straight after.
Yeah, I think doesn't he say something about having a gap in his memory at this point?
Yeah,
which is like very unusual for the Oankali.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just like the man, like honestly, Gabe, come on, like you were told one thing by two people, people actually, well, Tate, who he really cares about, and Akin, who actually does care about Gabe, and yet the man is just a stubborn ass.
Yeah, it's just mistrustful of Akin's motives and the whole process of healing Tate, and scared and doesn't really know what's going on. So, yeah.
But knows that if he disturbs Akin, he could stung him. But it never goes through his head that Akin could sting Tate. Like, you what, mate? Like, you really?
I mean, I think he might also have been worried about that, but it's I don't get it.
Yeah,
So if they say give us the time to finish the process, and he just doesn't. So.
Yeah. So should we go to the chapter 4 predictions then?
Sure.
So I thought that Tate is going to destroy Gabe, like rip him another one, for doing exactly the opposite thing she told him to do. But the thing is, while it's happening to Akin, like boy went completely unconscious, and I thought maybe that I wasn't sure, but like I sort of had this like weird feeling that maybe because of the stress caused what Gabe did, maybe Akin will undergo like forced metamorphosis. Like, like he's gonna, this unconsciousness leads to like the body just switching off and to go undergo metamorphosis. But like ahead of time, like like something that it wasn't supposed to happen until a bit later. Not far much later, but because of the sudden like trauma, the body decides to like protect itself and just goes haywire.
Yeah, and you're correct about that. Pretty much, we get him into metamorphosis.
But yeah, honestly, it's just like I had this weird feeling that it might happen sometime soon. Although I thought that maybe it's not gonna happen until later, towards the end of the book, in fact. But here we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose they have been kind of talking about the fact that he's not a full adult Oankali quite a lot.
Yes.
So a bit of foreshadowing for this metamorphosis.
Yeah. So yeah, so let's begin chapter 4 summary then, I guess. So we don't know how much time has passed since Akin fell unconscious. But the chapter starts with the boy being awake but unable to move or communicate with the outside world. He was just lying down, unable to move, but aware that there was humans around him. Well, first of all, someone around him, but then he realized that it's the humans that he was, that were, the village of humans, and they stayed with him, sometimes talked, but never touched him. Initially, he wasn't sure who they were. He felt that the same way as he did during the infancy stage. So when he was still inside of Lilith, right? Yes, he was.
Yes,
Lilith was his mother. Yes, sorry, it's just a bit of brain fart.
He was still remembering.
We
start out right at the very beginning of the book. He's like remembering what's going on while he was in the womb.
Yeah. So he couldn't, do anything, but he could remember. But where he could remember it, but could not take part of any of it. Eventually he made a connection of who those humans were. The first two were females, one small and yellow-haired and pale, and the other slightly larger, dark-haired and sun-browned. Simultaneously, he was glad that they were with him and feeling dread when they were coming in to visit him. Why? Because the women aroused him. Their scent reached deep into him and drew him to them. That's what the book says. Yet he could not move. He lay being drawn and utterly still. It was a torment, but he preferred it to solitude. I feel like Akin is developing some sort of fetish in here.
His whole sexual maturation process has been complicated.
Yeah, to say at least. Oh man. Yeah. Eventually he figured out who they were. One was Yori and the other was Tate. Obviously, it must have been some time that passed because Tate would visit him and speak of her crops growing and what different people in the settlements were doing. She would do her sewing and writing while she was sitting with Akin. Keeping a journal. Yori, who was also coming to visit him, kept a journal as well by herself, but it was more of a study journal of Akin's metamorphosis, because she never witnessed one, but she heard that Oankali undergo this process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she was a psychiatrist, right? So she had a medical background. But it's interesting to have a little bit of flipping the script there, right? You got humans studying the Oankali for a change. But not a common opportunity for them, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Unless they're...
Especially for a Oankali that's like Akin, basically perfectly looking human, and then he started to change physically. So that's I'm sure it's interesting observation to take place, like a caterpillar creating a cocoon and then becoming a butterfly.
Yeah. And especially unusual for a resistor, right? Because I assume the humans who have joined the Oankali would have opportunity to see the stuff, but not them,
because especially these guys, if some of them were from the group that Lilith woken up, and then I think she woken up another few groups afterwards. So who knows, what they probably didn't see much, except for suddenly the Oankali appear and they're like, oh, Lilith isn't actually the evil thing and she doesn't make shit up. So so they probably didn't experience what Lilith did with Nikanj, for example. But so we are told that Akin's physical appearance changed. He grew small sensory tentacles on his back, head and legs. His skin was grey and his hair was falling out. Yori would tell him that he needs to find a way to tell them if he wishes to be touched. She told Akin that Tate was feeling fine, but he needs to find a way to communicate with them. But until then, he will not be left alone, and she would see that someone was always with him. That statement really comforted Akin, because people undergoing metamorphosis had little tolerance for solitude.
Yeah, that's an interesting quality of the Oankali metamorphoses. Right? I think typically in like insects and stuff, when they're undergoing metamorphosis, they like go off and form a cocoon or something like that on their own and just do the thing. But it seems like the Oankali really like psychologically like to have people around them. It's odd because they seem to have this almost like locked in syndrome like state when they're going through their metamorphosis, right? A lot of the time they're sleeping, but a lot of the time they're conscious but can't do anything.
Absolutely.
But they don't really have any particular physical needs during that time either, so it's a strange collection of qualities.
And the thing is that we know about this because Lilith, when Nikanji was undergoing metamorphosis, she stayed with him pretty much all the time. And then when Dichan and Agjai came in, Nikanji's partners, that's when they all, were staying all together. So it's interesting, to see the fact that, what's interesting then for me is because obviously Uloi has already partners picked, but I wonder what about males and females? Do they undergo metamorphosis, the pure Oankali undergo metamorphosis by themselves with their family, their parents, or what? We don't really know, right? We're not told about this at all.
Well, I think Akin is probably doing what would be a fairly male typical metamorphosis for an Oankali here. So I'm assuming he would have a similar, or they would have a similar situation to him of wanting someone present.
Yeah. Well, anyway, continuing on, people coming, visit him. Even Gabe came to see him. I mean, he tried to tempt Akin with food and water. Sometimes he would bring things that Akin liked, plants and stuff like that Akin used to eat as a kid. And it made really Akin glad that, Gabe remembered. But that's not what Akin needed at that moment. Usually he would have eaten a lot before his metamorphosis starts. By this point, as it was undergoing, he would not need any sustenance. Akin heard from Lilith that Uloi did not need to sleep during their second metamorphosis, whereas males and females did, without the need of eating, drinking, urinating, or defecating. The only thing that stirred Akin were women. Why, man?
Yeah, it's interesting that so he's able to undergo this metamorphosis despite the fact that he's a bit low on nutrients, it seems. And that is an interesting one. It does seem like when insects undergo metamorphosis, it seems as though they have
the
resources they need, right?
Yeah.
I don't actually know what they typically use to store up energy. I don't know if they have lipids or some sugar-based, complex sugar-based store. But yeah, I assume they must stock up on a bunch of stuff ready for the metamorphosis.
I mean, it must be some sort of fat tissue type of thing, because you look at caterpillars, they eat and they get fatter and fatter and fatter until they barely can move, and then they make cocoons and then gooify themselves and become whatever they aim to become to. So
I suppose you might also get some glycogen, something like that, in addition to a lipid store.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. Should look that one up.
So, as the time was passing, one day Akin received a sudden shock when Gabe touched him. There was no warning, as is typical for Gabe, to come and do something. He placed his hands on Akin and shook him, and after a moment, Akin shuddered and his small sensory tentacles reached out towards the hand. Gabe jumped away and never touched Akin again.
Again. You had one job.
Yes. I know.
Why, Gabe? Why?
I know. Some other people visited Akin. Pilar and Matteo Leal, Tino's parents. Akin was immensely uncomfortable with Matteo's presence because he killed people with whom Akin cared for a lot. But eventually he realized and adjusted to it. That's literally what the book says.
Yeah, I thought that one was a bit. It's interesting because it reflects on, like, I think the people who Matteo killed are Galt and Kalik.
Yes,
the guys who kidnapped Akin.
Exactly. So,
but people about whom he cared. So
I mean, Stockholm syndrome is real. So
yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting reflection on, because he did also actually genuinely seem to care to some degree. I think especially for Kalik, if I remember rightly.
I think Galt was the one who actually really took care of the boy. Kalik became friendlier later on, but like I think it was Galt that was actually.
I think was Galt the one who he kind of like scared when he killed the Agouti.
Was he? I thought that was someone else. I thought Galt.
I think he if I remember correct, I can't remember which one was which. If it was Galt or Kalik. But there was one who was kind of close with, who was carrying him properly and so on.
Yes.
And then he
for some
scared him.
Yeah.
And then he became closer with the other one.
Yes, but like I remember because Kalik's name is so unique. I remember that like Kalik was nice to Akin. I can't remember. Like at this point, like I'm not certain. It doesn't matter, I guess.
Yeah,
but
I forget. I think it was those two in those roles, but I forget which way around it was. My memory was Galt first, then Kalik, but I might be wrong. No.
But yeah.
Anyway, I just thought I'd remark on the fact that the people about whom Akin cared a lot,
where they were his kidnappers,
in quotes, were his kidnappers. Yeah. I was like, not sure that's the. I mean, it's kind of nice that you care as much as you do Akin, but. Careful.
Yeah. But yeah, the other people who'd visit him was like Colina Wilton, but she never spoke to him. Macy Wilton came, which surprised the king. He thought that the drunk didn't do anything but drink and lie somewhere in a ditch. Macy would come and carve things from wood and talk to Akin about Amashkacht, and discuss things about Mars. Stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's where we get that first indication that Tate's told other people about Mars.
Yep.
And it might even be that Macy, the drunk, is get himself together.
Yeah.
Because of
the opportunity, hope,
the possibility of Mars.
Yeah. So the chapter ends exactly with Macy saying that not everyone wants to go, but he thinks that they are crazy to stay here when there is an opportunity to preserve the species. And don't you worry about the others. And once again, Akin began to worry. I just love this. There's the passage in the book and don't you worry about the others, Macy says. And at once, Akin began to worry. It's a comedic timing, honestly.
Yeah, and it fits very well with just life, right? You tell someone, don't worry about it.
Immediately you start worrying.
It immediately makes them worry about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. But, the fact that humans were refusing to go and live meant that they would disagree and sometimes fight, leading to killing each other. So that's what Akin not wanted to happen, but unfortunately there was no way to speed up the metamorphosis, and Akin could only wait, and this is where the chapter ends, basically.
Yep, I gotta wait with the prospect that people might be killing over one another over whether or not to go to Mars.
Man, honestly, but that's very human, to resist to the last man standing.
Yep. Although, I mean, it's I can certainly see why people in this case would be mistrustful of the Oankali and not willing to give up Earth. But at the same time, there's it's definitely one that would produce dissent, right? They're going to disagree about that. People are going to be trusting them enough to relocate to Mars and give it a try because it's the only opportunity they've got, and then other people are just going to be like, no, we're not giving the benefit of the doubt. We want Earth. Yeah, although that camp is, I don't think, going to do well.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because, like I was predicting so far about like, oh, there's definitely going to be some sort of civil war between the resistors and the... Now my idea is like, now it's going to be a civil war between the resistors, the camp that wants to go to Mars, versus the ones that wants to stay on Earth, and basically the ones who want to stay on Earth that either will keep raiding the ones going to Mars to prevent them to going, and also fighting the Oankali to, as you said, to the last man standing. So,
yeah, so interesting. Actually, I suppose that makes for a potentially more interesting conflict, right? Because if it's just they try and rebel against the Oankali, they get squished immediately, more or less, right? They can't really build any tension around that.
Yeah.
So, what are your predictions for chapter 5?
I feel that I thought that in chapter 5, finally Akin can wake up from his metamorphosis, right? Like, to actually, regain the control over his body. And even though he was told, how much he has changed by Yori, for example, seeing yourself in the mirror is a completely different thing. So I feel like he's gonna be he's gonna have a shock of how much he changed. But at the same time, knowing Akin, he's gonna be like, okay, things are getting bad because probably people are not wanting to, or like this, as I said, there's gonna be some conflicts and disagreements between people that want to go to Mars versus that want to stay on Earth. So he will be not wasting any time and try to get people, convince people to go to Mars.
Okay. And you remarked earlier on his his appearance was changing quite a lot.
Yeah.
And do you think, how much do you think that's going to impact his thinking about his ability to convince the humans?
That's a good question. Now? That's a good question. Like, it definitely is going to affect his reliability at this point, because him being a human when looking like human was a massive advantage, right? The only thing that was not human-like was his tongue, which was easily hidden, right? But at this point, he's basically an Oankali trying to convince people to become, to go to Mars. Yeah.
So he's going to wake up and be like, God damn it, I look like a freaking creepy but tentacled space alien at the worst possible moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Good question, and I feel like it's going to definitely impede in his efforts. It's going to be
okay,
serious problem. So, yeah.
Very well.
I guess that's it for today. Relatively short episode.
Pretty much, yeah. Two relatively short chapters. I think the next one's a bit longer.
Yeah.
I have to check the numbers again. Yeah. Oh, I had one more little reference to throw in.
Go on.
That I recalled from earlier, because we talked about the debate about living forever, or whether or not that's a good idea. I have to throw in the reference to chapter 39, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, of Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. Which summarizes my thoughts very well on that subject, actually. If you're unfamiliar with that Harry Potter fanfiction...
Oh, you need to read it. It's...
yeah.
10 out of 10.
If you like this podcast, there is an extremely high probability you will enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 10 out of 10 type of thing. Although,
Great comedy.
Yeah.
As well as good sciencey stuff and...
solid science. There's solid
yeah.
explanation to things too as well. So
yeah, and a rich collection of references to various aspects of culture.
Yeah.
With a little bit of satire and deconstruction and much else. No, there's a good audiobook version as well. So gotta recommend that. Gotta plug that at least once, because we've not done that since a little while.
Yes, it
came up in the first episode because it was one of the things that inspired this.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, thank you very much everyone for listening. We are Xenothesis. You can find all the places we upload our podcast on xenothesis.com. I was Michael Glinka.
Yeah, I was Rich Jackson.
Bye.